In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, a voice, silent for nearly 2,000 years, has begun to speak. It emerges not from a human throat, but from a block of charcoal, a relic of a world annihilated in a single catastrophic day. These are the Herculaneum scrolls, flash-carbonized in the eruption that consumed the Roman city in 79 AD. For centuries, they were unreadable mysteries, too fragile to unroll, their secrets locked within. The story begins in 1752. Well diggers, tunneling through volcanic rock, stumbled upon a magnificent seaside villa. Within its walls, they found what appeared to be charred logs. These were, in fact, papyrus scrolls from what is now known as the Villa of the Papyri, the personal library of Lucius Calpurnius Piso Caesoninus, the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. It remains the only complete library to have survived from the ancient world. When Vesuvius erupted, a pyroclastic surge, a wave of superheated gas and ash reaching temperatures near 500 degrees Celsius, swept through the city. It did not incinerate the scrolls, it baked them, transforming each delicate roll into a brittle, carbonized artifact. For generations, the challenge seemed insurmountable. To physically open them was to destroy them. They would crumble into dust. The ink itself presented an even greater problem. Made from soot or lampblack, it was also carbon-based. Under X-ray and CT scans, the writing was effectively invisible, the carbon ink indistinguishable from the carbonized papyrus. The scrolls could be digitally unwrapped, their layered structures revealed on a screen, but the pages remained stubbornly, frustratingly blank. The people were gone, the culture erased, and yet here, in these silent objects, a story waited. Then, on March 15, 2023, a new chapter began. Entrepreneurs Nat Friedman and Daniel Gross, alongside computer scientist Brent Seals, launched the Vesuvius Challenge. The mission was a global call to arms, to read a complete text sealed inside a carbonized scroll without ever physically opening it. The project was built upon more than 2 decades of pioneering work by Professor Seals and his team at the University of Kentucky, who had developed non-invasive methods for peering inside fragile historical objects. The breakthrough infinitesimal scans of the scrolls, learning to detect the subtle, almost imperceptible textural changes left by the ancient ink. The AI began to see the ghost of the writing. And as the first words materialized from the digital noise, they sent shockwaves through the historical community. The text was not a known work, but a philosophical treatise on pleasure, music, and the senses, possibly from the Epicurean philosopher Philodemus himself. It was an untouched voice from antiquity, challenging long-held beliefs and revealing arguments thought lost to time. The people are gone. The places are gone. But in this fusion of ancient catastrophe and modern ingenuity, a library once condemned to silence is being resurrected. Each recovered word is a testament not only to what was lost, but to the unyielding human quest to reclaim it, proving that not even the fire of a volcano can permanently extinguish an idea. In the shadow of Vesuvius, a library lay silent for nearly 2 millennia. 1,800 scrolls, carbonized into brittle, blackened husks by the same pyroclastic flow that entombed Pompeii. They were the last remnants of a vast collection of classical thought, a library of Greek and Latin texts frozen at the moment of disaster. For centuries, they were untouchable. To unroll them was to destroy them, their fragile pages turning to dust at the slightest touch. They were a library we could see, but could never read. The first whispers of a solution emerged in 2015. A team of researchers began perfecting a revolutionary technique known as virtual unwrapping. The method was elegant in its ambition. using high-powered computed tomography, or CT scans, to create intricate three-dimensional models of a scroll. These digital phantoms could then be unrolled, layer by layer, in the memory of a computer, leaving the priceless original object entirely unharmed. This audacious technology first proved its power on the En-Gedi scroll. Pulled from the ashes of a synagogue destroyed by fire some 1,500 years ago, it was a similarly charred and delicate artifact. Virtual unwrapping pierced through the carbonized animal hide, revealing the metallic ink within. The text that emerged was astonishing. The oldest known copy of the Book of Leviticus since the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was a monumental success, a bridge built across centuries of silence. But the Herculaneum scrolls presented a challenge of an entirely different magnitude. Here, the problemed writers had used a simple ink made of soot and water. To a CT scanner, the faint traces of writing were chemically indistinguishable from the burnt scrat. But its pattern was so subtle, so profoundly faint, that it remained invisible to the naked eye and to conventional analysis. The library remained locked. The key began to turn into—
Wait, this is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
2019. With the support of a $500,000 grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, a dedicated team developed the first machine learning methods designed for this specific, seemingly impossible task. They trained algorithms to hunt for the microscopic variations in the papyrus structure, the subtle changes in density and texture that hinted at the presence of ink. This foundational work led to the establishment of the Duce Lab, a specialized imaging laboratory devoted to solving the most intractable problems in cultural heritage. Then came the catalyst that would change everything: the Vesuvius Challenge. Building on this new foundation, the project released a torrent of new data to the public. Scrolls from the Institut de France were scanned with unprecedented precision at the Diamond Light Source, a particle accelerator near Oxford. These were not mere CT scans. They were extraordinarily high-resolution digital maps of the scroll's innermost structures. This priceless data, along with over $1 million in prize money from a consortium of donors, was offered to anyone in the world who could solve the puzzle. Almost overnight, a global community ignited. Students and engineers, historians and amateur researchers, a digital agora of brilliant minds, converged on a problem that had resisted solution for generations. They brought new perspectives, new algorithms, and a relentless collaborative spirit. Less than a year later, in December of 2023, the silence was broken. After 275 years of failed attempts since their discovery, the contents of a fully sealed Herculaneum scroll were finally being read. The $700,000 grand prize was awarded not to a single institution, but to a small international team. Youssef Nader, Luc Ferreter, and Julian Schilliger, a 21-year-old American student among them. Their solution was a masterwork of modern computation. They deployed multiple competing artificial intelligence models, training them to detect the ghost of the ink. To ensure they were not merely seeing phantoms in the noise, random variations in the papyrus that mimicked writing, they cross-checked every result. One AI would propose a letter. Another would be tasked to verify it. Through this rigorous process of digital debate and repeated testing, they achieved an accuracy of over 85% in distinguishing ancient ink from the carbonized background. It was a result that defied all expectations. The organizers themselves had estimated there was less than a 30% chance that any team would meet the challenge's strict standards. Their work unearthed 11 new columns of text, revealing more than 2,000 readable characters. And beyond simply detecting the ink, Their submission introduced the most advanced automatic segmentation system ever created, a program that could digitally separate the impossibly compressed layers of the scroll. For the first time, we are reading the words of a philosopher from the classical world, discussing music, food, and the fleeting nature of pleasure. The technology born of the 21st century has reached back into the first, resurrecting a voice from the ashes. It is a testament not only to human ingenuity, but to our enduring need to connect with our past, to understand that the voices silenced by time and catastrophe are not truly gone, but are merely waiting for us to find a new way to listen. From the digital ether, a lost voice from antiquity begins to speak. In the silent hum of servers, a revolutionary tool known as the tomato anacalyptor, the creation of Julian Schilliger, painstakingly stitches together ghostly fragments of papyrus. Drawn from the carbonized husks of multiple scrolls, it confirms familiar passages in some areas, but in others, it ventures into the unknown. On the fragile outermost layers, the very first to be exposed to the world in nearly 2 millennia, entirely new writing emerges, coaxed from the ashes by the patient logic of an algorithm. So far, a mere 5% of the first scroll has been digitally unfurled and deciphered. Yet even this small window into a forgotten world has proven monumental. Papyrologists, poring over every revealed column, have completed a preliminary transcription. Their conclusion is electrifying. The text is not a copy of any known work. It is a unique survivor, a philosophical treatise containing material never before seen from the ancient world. A full scholarly study is now underway as historians and classicists race to comprehend the thoughts of a mind silenced for centuries. The decoded passages delve deep into the heart of Epicurean philosophy, exploring the complex nature of pleasure as the highest, most essential good. The author poses questions that resonate to this day, examining how the availability of goods, from a simple loaf of bread to the most exotic delicacy, shapes the pleasure they provide. He interrogates a timeless assumption. Does scarcity truly make something more desirable than abundance? He considers the psychology of possession, pondering whether we are more willing to relinquish things that are plentiful than those that are rare. The phrasing is dense, the argument intricate, and it clearly continues far beyond the tantalizing fragment that has been recovered. Within these early passages, a name appears: Ziz, who is believed to have been the resident thinker at the very villa where these scrolls were found. Near the end of the recovered text, the author's tone sharpens. He unleashes a blistering critique of his intellectual opponents, accusing them of offering no meaningful understanding of pleasure, of clinging to hollow and superficial doctrines. The weight of the evidence, the style of the prose, and the philosophical focus have led most scholars to a single, breathtaking conclusion. Highest circles of Roman society mense in artificial intelligence, in the delicate art of detecting phantom ink on blackened papyrus, are expected to illuminate the many uncertainties that still linger in the shadows. To understand why this recovery is not merely an academic exercise, but a resurrection, we must travel back to the day these thoughts were entombed. We must go to the 24th of August, 79 AD, the wrath of Mount Vesuvius. On that morning, the day began as any other in the bustling, sun-drenched seaside town of Herculaneum. People moved through their routines, utterly unaware that their home, a jewel of the Roman world, lay in the shadow of a waking giant. To them, Vesuvius was simply a mountain, its slopes green with vineyards and olive groves, not a ticking time bomb. 17 years earlier, a powerful earthquake had shaken the region to its core, a violent tremor that toppled statues and cracked walls. But few, if any, saw it as a warning. In the Roman mind, earthquakes were routine events, the unpredictable fury of Poseidon, the god of the sea, not the subterranean signals of an impending catastrophe. As magma pushed relentlessly upward from deep within the earth, small fissures opened in the ground, and plumes of hot steam escaped into the summer air. These subtle signs, the final whispers of a world on the brink, went
If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything upside down.
unrecognized. Deep below the surface, the pressure continued to build, a force of unimaginable power straining against the Earth's crust. Then, at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the mountain broke its silence. With a sudden, violent force, Mount Vesuvius erupted. The very ground shuddered, and a column of superheated gas, ash, and pumice tore into the sky, a cataclysmic monument to the end of an era. For the people of Herculaneum, and for the priceless library of Philodemus, time had just run out. The same volcanic fire that consumed a civilization, flash-carbonizing its literature, would inadvertently become its preserver, creating a time capsule of thought that would wait 2,000 years for technology to finally break its seal. The sky over the Bay of Naples tore open. From the throat of the mountain, a colossal column of ash and superheated gas erupted with unimaginable force, punching through the atmosphere. It ascended so high, so fast, that for the people in the nearby city of Pompeii, the sun itself was blotted from existence, began to shear the deadly cloud, carrying a vast plume eastward, directly toward Pompeii. But in the coastal town of Herculaneum, closer to the volcano's western flank, residents could only watch in mounting terror as the eruption intensified, the mountain groaning as it disgorged its fiery contents. Soon, the sky began to fall. A rain of pumice, a light and porous volcanic stone, descended upon the region. At first, it was a strange curiosity, then a suffocating blizzard. Ash and debris accumulated in a thick gray blanket, silencing the world as it smothered streets and settled heavily upon rooftops. Panic, once a spark, became a wildfire. Some grabbed what they could and fled into the growing chaos. Others sought refuge indoors, praying to their gods that this terrible omen would pass. By 5 o'clock that evening, their prayers had gone unanswered. The sheer weight of the pumice became unbearable. Across the city, timbers groaned, cracked, and then splintered. Roofs began to collapse, entombing those who had sought shelter beneath them. Just after midnight, the eruption entered its most lethal phase. The immense column, having lost its upward momentum, collapsed inward upon itself. This gravitational failure unleashed a phenomenon of pure destruction, what geologists call a pyroclastic flow. It was a ground-hugging avalanche of incandescent gas, ash, and pulverized rock, a roaring phantom that raced down the mountainside at over 100 kilometers per hour. The temperature inside this churning cloud exceeded 400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize human flesh in an instant. Herculaneum had no time to react. The town, nestled at the foot of the volcano, was overwhelmed in seconds. The searing breath of the mountain swept through its streets, incinerating everything in its path. Buildings, market stalls, and people were buried beneath successive waves of scorching the city deeper and deeper. By dawn, when cooler, slower flows finally reached the choked streets of Pompeii, Herculaneum was already gone. It lay sealed beneath 70 to 80 feet of volcanic deposits, deep enough in places to completely bury a 4-story building. For centuries, a comforting myth persisted. It was believed that most of Herculaneum's residents had seen the danger and escaped before the worst arrived. Only a small number of skeletons had ever been found within the city proper. leading scholars to assume the town had been largely evacuated in time. That belief collapsed about 20 years ago. For over 200 years, excavation forces had been intermittently and painstakingly removing the hardened volcanic tuff. As archaeologists worked their way toward the ancient shoreline, they uncovered a devastating truth. Inside a series of stone boat sheds lining the former beach, they found—
Wait, this is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
what history had tried to forget. Dozens of human bodies, packed tightly together, frozen in their final, desperate moments. These were the people who had not stayed in their homes. They had fled toward the sea, their only hope a rescue that would never come. They were trapped at the very edge of escape. Bioanthropologist Dr. Pier Paolo Petrone, studying the remains, identified the unmistakable and horrific signs of extreme thermal shock. At the moment of death, their muscles had contracted instantly, forcing handsming exposure to intense heat. The victims were struck almost immediately as the superheated surge, with temperatures reaching between 400 and 500 degrees Celsius, engulfed their stone shelters in a fraction of a second. The very force that took their lives also preserved them. In its apocalyptic fury, Vesuvius had created a perfect, chilling snapshot of its own destruction. A city not merely Rue. In the 79th year of the 1st century, on the shores of the Bay of Naples, the end of the world arrived not with a warning, but with a whisper of superheated gas. For the inhabitants of Herculaneum, nestled in the shadow of Vesuvius, death was an instantaneous thermal event. There was no time to register fear, no moment to comprehend the roaring cloud of ash and rock descending upon them at the speed of a hurricane. It was a force that extinguished life in a single, silent exhalation. Yet, in the crucible of this destruction, an archaeological miracle was forged. The very pyroclastic surge that annihilated the town also entombed it. Ash Anmints. For nearly 2,000 years, this hermetic seal preserved the delicate architecture of human bone, the ghost of flesh, and the precise postures of the dead. Beneath the earth, a city of the departed waited. Excavations have since revealed a haunting tableau of this final day. Within the vaulted stone chambers of the boathouses, the fornici, where hundreds had sought refuge from the falling rock, they were found huddled together in family groups. Here, a woman was discovered curled around the delicate skeleton of an unborn child, a silent testament to a life 7 months in the making, extinguished before it could begin. To date, archaeologists have unearthed the remains of roughly 300 individuals, a fraction of those believed to still lie in their volcanic grave, each telling a piece of a collective story of sudden catastrophe and the futility of escape. But amidst this chronicle of shared tragedy, one figure stands apart. One set of remains, discovered not in the crowded shelter of the vaults, but alone on the open beach, would challenge every assumption. He was found lying face down, an anomaly in a landscape of communal death, a man who, in the final calculus of existence, had chosen a different path. He is known to science only by a designation, specimen E26. An adult male, his skeleton was found almost perfectly intact, but more astonishingly, patches of his skin had not been destroyed, but carbonized, blackened, mummified tissue still clinging to bone. On his scalp, researchers could discern the remnants of this tissue, a stark and visceral reminder of the 500-degree heat that struck him. It was a thermal shock so extreme, it would have vaporized soft tissue and boiled the fluids within his skull in a fraction of a second. Modern forensic pathology offers a window into his final, defiant act. Dr. Richard Shepard, an expert in disaster forensics, examined the position of the body. It was not a simple collapse. This was the posture of struggle. The man lay face down, his left hand not resting on the ancient sand, but clawed into it, fingers digging into the earth as if trying to pull himself forward, to reach a safety that did not exist. The skeleton is not a body at rest, it is a final, desperate verb, an action frozen in the amber of catastrophe, capturing both the unimaginable force of the eruption and a profound human instinct to survive against it. The story etched in his bones was amplified by the objects he carried. At his side, investigators found a sword and a dagger, the unmistakable tools of a Roman soldier. A silver-trimmed belt lay nearby, and with it, a leather pouch, heavy with the currency of an empire. Inside were gold and silver coins amounting to a small fortune, a sum equivalent to nearly 2 years of a legionary's pay. This was no ordinary civilian caught in the chaos. The wear on his vertebrae revealed the early onset of arthritis, placing him in his late 30s or early 40s, a veteran of a hard life. An examination of his skull showed his front teeth were long gone, perhaps lost in training or in the brutal reality of combat. He was a soldier, armed and carrying his life's savings, yet his presence on that beach remains a profound enigma. Pier Paolo Petroni, who has studied the Herculaneum victims for decades, notes the baffling nature of his choice. Why, when hundreds of others scrambled for the perceived safety of the stone vaults, did this man remain in the open? Was he a guard, standing his post to the last? A rescuer, attempting to guide a boat to shore? Or was he simply a man who saw the futility of the shelters and chose to meet his fate under the open sky? The questions linger, suspended in time with the ash that claimed him. He remains on that ancient shore, a solitary sentinel at the edge of oblivion. His bones do not speak of a panicked flight, but of a final, grounded moment. A soldier, facing a force no shield could block, no sword could parry. He is a testament not just to how a population died, but to how one man, in the face of absolute annihilation, chose to meet the end. On the very edge of the world, where the sea met a shore soon to be erased, a lone figure stood his ground. We cannot know his purpose. Was he a soldier on duty? A sentinel watching the unfolding chaos? Or was he a guard, tasked with protecting some precious cargo as the sky turned to fire and ash? His story is lost to the moments before the end. Then, the mountain unleashed its final, terrible breath. A pyroclastic surge, an incandescent cloud of gas and rock moving at hundreds of kilometers an hour. For the man on the shore, the end was not a struggle. It was an instantaneous, brutal transformation. The superheated wave, many times the boiling point of water, vaporized his flesh and fluids, contracting muscle with a force that froze him in his final, defiant posture. 2 millennia would pass before human eyes saw him again. A specter locked in volcanic rock, his military belt still buckled, his sword at his side. In a leather purse, a small fortune in coins lay untouched.
If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything upside down.
Were they his life's savings? A payroll for a unit that no longer existed? Or the collected valuables of others, entrusted to him in the final moments? The rock holds his body, but not his secrets. His lonely vigil is but a single thread in a far larger enigma. The death of a man is a tragedy. The death of a city, a cade under light ash and pumice, became a cautionary tale whispered across the empire. Herculaneum suffered a different fate. It was not merely destroyed, it was erased. swallowed whole by a dense, suffocating tide of volcanic mud that hardened into stone, entombing it under more than 20 meters of solid rock. The Roman world, confronted with a disaster of such biblical scale, a landscape so utterly and violently remade, did the only thing it could. It turned away. A deliberate, collective amnesia took hold. Centuries bled into one another. The memory of Herculaneum faded from maps, from histories, from the minds of men. By the Middle Ages, its name was a phantom, a whisper of a place that might have been. By the dawn of the 18th century, it had achieved the status of pure myth, spoken of in the same breath as Atlantis, a golden city lost beneath the earth. Above this vast, silent necropolis, new life took root. Villages and farms grew, their inhabitants utterly oblivious to the perfectly preserved Roman world sleeping beneath their feet. The silence was finally shattered, not by a scholar or an emperor, but by a farmer digging a well in the early 1700s. His shovel struck not earth, but marble. He had, by pure chance, broken through the roof of the ancient city's theater. Word of the discovery traveled fast, reaching the ears of the Bourbon monarchy, the rulers of Naples. This was not a moment for science or history, but for avarice. The king saw not a lost civilization, but a treasure chest to adorn his new palace. He dispatched teams of forced laborers and prisoners, men known as cuniculari, or tunnelers, into the darkness. Their mission was simple: plunder. The work was a descent into hell itself. Chipping away at the stone-hard volcanic tuff, they navigated a labyrinth of cramped, unlit passages. The air was thick with toxic gases seeping from the volcanic earth, a constant, invisible threat. Tunnels, dug with primitive tools and no structural support, would frequently collapse, entombing the diggers alongside the ancients. Driven by fear and exhaustion, they would carve through priceless frescoes and mosaic floors, often abandoning a tunnel just meters from a magnificent discovery, convinced they had reached nothing but barren rock. The safety of these men was a distant concern. The acquisition of treasure was paramount. This brutal hunt gave way to a more organized, if still destructive, endeavor in 1738. The new king, Charles III of Spain, commissioned a formal excavation. He placed a Spanish military engineer, Roque Joaquín de Alcubierre, in charge, a man whose methods were more suited to siege warfare than delicate archaeology. They blasted and hacked their way through villas and temples, their primary goal still the acquisition of statues and frescoes. Yet, from this chaos, something extraordinary emerged. The treasures they unearthed were meticulously drawn and catalogued in a monumental series of volumes, Le Antiquità di Herculano. These books set furniture, their daily lives, was revealed not through flawed copies, but in its pristine, original form. The images ignited a revolution in taste, sweeping away the excesses of the Baroque and Rococo, and birthing the clean, rational lines of neoclassicism. The lost city, once violently silenced by nature and deliberately forgotten by man, was now dictating the aesthetic of an entire continent. It is a stark reminder that what is buried is never truly gone. It waits, locked in silence, holding not just the secrets of its own time, but the power to reshape the future of those who dare to look back. In the gilded salons and drawing rooms of late 18th century Europe, whispers of antiquity began to shape the very fabric of modern life. Designs unearthed from the volcanic tomb of Herculaneum found a second life, reborn not in stone and ash, but in porcelain and pigment. The clean, elegant lines of Rome, long buried and forgotten, now adorned the most fashionable objects of the age. They appeared in the delicate frescoes of wall paintings, in the elegant posture of tripod tables, and on the ornate surfaces of perfume burners. Even the simple act of taking tea became an echo of a lost world, with classical figures gracing the sides of delicate cups. A civilization silenced by nature was speaking once more, its aesthetic shaping homes and palaces far beyond the shores of Italy. Yet, even as its influence spread, the source itself fell silent. In the year 1762, the excavations at Herculaneum ground to a halt. The work, once a beacon of discovery, now faced a damning critique from one of Europe's foremost scholars, Johann Joachim Winckelmann. He condemned the enterprise with righteous fury, branding it not as a careful study of the past, but as careless treasure hunting. To him, the diggers were not archaeologists, they were plunderers, driven by the thrill of the find rather than the pursuit of knowledge. At this very moment, a rival emerged from the earth just a few kilometers away. Attention shifted to nearby Pompeii, a site that offered a far easier path to its secrets. While Herculaneum lay crushed beneath a suffocating 20-meter-deep shroud of hardened pyroclastic flow, Pompeii was buried under a mere 4 meters of porous pumice and ash. It was a practical choice, but one that would leave Herculaneum to slumber in its rock-hard tomb for another generation. A city so profound, however, cannot remain forgotten forever. As the 19th century dawned, interest in the deeper, more challenging site revived. Between 1828 and 1837, King Francis I of the Two Sicilies ordered the purchase of new lands above the buried city, encouraging a fresh wave of excavation. This momentum carried forward into a new political era. After the unification of Italy in 1861, the state continued these acquisitions, allowing archaeologists to methodically expand their search eastward, chasing the unseen contours of the ancient town. By 1875, the progress was undeniable. After centuries of neglect and chaotic tunneling, Herculaneum was slowly, painstakingly being restored to history. Despite these decades of renewed effort, the city we see today is but a fragment, a tantalizing glimpse of a much larger whole. Andrew Wallace Hadrill and the modern teams who walk these ancient streets believe that vast and vital structures still lie hidden, sealed beneath the modern town of Herculano. They speak of great public buildings, perhaps even the city's main library or additional bath complexes, places of civic life and learning that the Bourbon treasure hunters, in their narrow search for statues and gold, never reached. These buried spaces are not just art.
This is where things get really interesting. What you're about to hear might explain why this was never meant to be discovered.
Architectural voids, they are silent vaults, holding the vital, unread clues to the true rhythm of daily life in a Roman coastal resort. In a newly exposed tunnel, a raw wound in the earth, the dual destruction is laid bare. Here, the violence of Vesuvius and the crude methods of early excavators collide. A row of magnificent columns, once standing proud, now lies shattered. Their ornate capitals are violently separated from their bases, a testament to the cataclysmic force that tore the city apart. These ruins belonged to a basilica, a cornerstone of Roman society, a grand hall where justice was dispensed, commerce was negotiated, and the affairs of the empire were managed on a local scale. Using the surprisingly detailed maps drafted by Bourbon-era engineers, experts today can reconstruct its ghost, imagining the scale and grandeur of a space now reduced to rubble and shadow. While much of its artwork was removed long ago, ripped from the walls to adorn a royal palace, fragments remain. Scraps of vibrant frescoes cling stubbornly to the plaster, and scattered artifacts lie where they were discarded, deemed unworthy by men who valued only the whole and the spectacular. The early excavators cut out what they considered precious, leaving a victory that came at a terrible cost. They ignored the broader story, the context, the very soul of the city and its people. By the rigorous standards of modern archaeology, their work was an act of systematic looting, a campaign driven by the acquisition of wealth and the enhancement of prestige, not the patient pursuit of understanding. Even so, they did not, and could not, take everything. Beyond the human remains, preserved in their final, agonizing moments, other, more subtle truths lay in wait. Modern science, analyzing the very DNA of those who perished, has uncovered a shocking and deeply human drama that unfolded amidst the chaos. The evidence suggests that as the eruption began, as ash and pumice rained down, some residents did not flee immediately. Instead, they moved through the increasingly deserted city, looting the homes of their prosperous and perhaps already departed neighbors. This was not the act of a foreign invader, but of the city's own people, a desperate scramble for survival in the face of annihilation. The discovery dismantles our romanticized image of a populace united in tragedy. It reveals a far more complex, unsettling reality. The city was not just a victim of the volcano. In its final hours, it was also a victim of itself. For in unearthing a civilization frozen in its final moments, we find not a perfect relic of a bygone age, but a profound and timeless mirror, a reflection of our own complex, flawed, and enduring humanity. In the shadow of a slumbering volcano, the Earth continues to surrender the ghosts of Herculaneum. Near the ruins of its grand basilica, archaeologists brought forth from the darkness a face not seen by human eyes for nearly 2 millennia. It was a statue head, its painted surface miraculously intact, a discovery of profound rarity. The responsibility for this fragile echo of the past fell to Dr. Monica Castaldi, whose team was tasked with shepherding it into the modern world. The moment she received the news, a critical race against time began. The ancient paint, preserved for centuries in the stable, anaerobic environment of the volcanic debris, was now exposed to the air. The air, for the first time in almost 2,000 years, became its greatest enemy. Dr. Castaldi knew that if the thin, delicate layer of pigment were to dry too quickly, it would flake away into dust, lost forever. Her instructions were immediate and precise. Keep the head moist. It was carefully sealed within a simple plastic bag, a modern tool providing a shield against the ravages of the present. Because of this swift intervention, the impossible survived. The painted surface held, revealing a level of detail that has rewritten our understanding of classical sculpture. Around the eyes, the color remains astonishingly clear, a fringe of lashes and defined brows that bestow upon the marb Roman art as the Romans themselves saw it: vibrant, colorful, and alive. Experts now believe the stoic, powerful face belongs to an Amazon, one of the legendary warrior within the basilica's hallowed walls. This single artifact is a key to understanding what makes Herculaneum so utterly unique. While its sister city, Pompeii, was buried under a slow, crushing rain of ash and pumice, Herculaneum was annihilated by something far faster and far hotter. It was engulfed by a series of pyroclastic surges, superheated avalanches of gas and volcanic matter, moving at hundreds of kilometers per hour. This thermal shock, an intense, suffocating torrent, had a paradoxical effect. It carbonized organic materials in an instant, not burning them to ash, but transforming them into pure carbon, freezing their exact shape at the moment of impact. The result is a time capsule of unparalleled fidelity. Here, entire 2-story buildings remain, their upper floors, wooden beams, and staircases still in place. In one excavated home, a carbonized wooden partition, its elegant latticework perfectly preserved, gives the building its name. The intense heat turned the living timber into a skeletal silhouette of black carbon. yet every groove and carved detail remains hauntingly visible. Elsewhere, an entire bed frame, a place of rest and dreams, lies frozen as a carbon effigy. In even rarer instances, the chaotic nature of the eruption produced anomalies. A wooden door miraculously.
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery begins.
Non-carbonized did of Armageddon. And it was not only wood that endured this transformation. Archaeologists have uncovered a humble wicker basket, its intricate weave still apparent, perhaps once used for fishing in the nearby bay. They found a loaf of bread, scored into sections and stamped by the baker before it was placed in the oven. The letters A, V, and M are still legible on its carbonized crust, a mark of ownership or quality control in a bustling Roman town. Scholars debate their precise meaning, perhaps the baker's initials, or a stamp indicating the owner of the flour. But their presence transforms a simple foodstuff into a document of commerce and daily routine. To find the most intimate secrets of Herculaneum, however, one must look even deeper, beneath the very foundations of these preserved homes. Here lies an ancient sewer system, a subterranean world that also served as the city's final dumping ground. Professor Mark Robinson has dedicated himself to studying this unglamorous archive. Sifting through the compacted waste, he has found the debris of life itself: broken pottery, discarded animal bones, and the remains of food. This is the ghost of a Roman meal, revealing not what was written in official histories, but what was actually cooked and eaten, night after night. These discoveries, from the piercing gaze of a painted Amazon to the discarded remnants of a family dinner, offer more than just a picture of the past. They are a profound connection to the people who lived and died here. The grand monuments of Rome speak of empire and power, but the carbonized furniture and stamped bread of Herculaneum speak of humanity. They remind us that history is not an abstract narrative, but a collection of countless, fragile, individual lives. In the echoes of the ordinary, we find the most enduring truths about who we were and what remains when everything else is lost. Beneath the volcanic shroud of Vesuvius, the ghost city of Herculaneum offers a chillingly intimate portrait of Roman life, frozen in its final moments. Here, the mundane is rendered profound. In the design of its homes, kitchens were often placed adjacent to toilets, a pragmatic arrangement allowing household scraps to be discarded down the same shaft that carried away human waste. Within the city's sewers, archaeologists have uncovered the mineralized remnants of last meals: cherry stones, apple and grape seeds, the hard pits of peaches. A silent testament to the bounty of a summer afternoon abruptly cut short. This intricate system of sanitation was powered by a feat of engineering that defined the Roman world: the aqueduct. Water, the lifeblood of the city, flowed from the great Aqua Augustus, a colossal network that quenched the thirst of towns all across the Bay of Naples. The popular image of towering stone arches marching across the landscape is only part of the story. The vast majority of this system ran unseen, deep underground, a subterranean river channeled through tunnels. Arches were reserved for necessity, elegant solutions for conquering valleys and ravines. Within Herculaneum itself, this water was managed with breathtaking sophistication. At the edge of the city, distribution centers, or castella aquae, would first divide the flow. It was then channeled into 3 distinct lines, reflecting the rigid structure of Roman society. One artery fed the grand public baths, another served the private villas of the wealthy elite, and a third supplied the public fountains, ensuring that every citizen, regardless of status, had access to fresh, clean water. Divert the excess through a venous network. Divert the excess through a venous network of lead pipes to smaller towers at street corners. From these secondary reservoirs, the water continued its journey, feeding the ubiquitous public taps. This was the constant off-take system, a design of radical simplicity and effectiveness. It meant the water never stopped. The fountains never ran dry. It was a level of convenience and public health that would not be seen again in Europe until the 19th century. This ceaseless flow of water was the quiet pulse of a prosperous and peaceful town. Its houses, clinging to the cliffs, overlooked the azure expanse of the bay. Life was one of comfort and abundance, underwritten by an infrastructure that was centuries ahead of its time. The human toll of the eruption, once thought to be modest, was later revised tenfold as hundreds of skeletons were discovered huddled in the boathouses along the shore. A final, desperate flight from the inferno. In a matter of hours, this world of unparalleled order and ingenuity was erased, buried under a pyroclastic surge that preserved everything and saved no one. It remains a stark reminder that even the most advanced civilizations exist by the fragile permission of the natural world. Their greatest achievements always a single, cataclysmic moment away from becoming memory.
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real